Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hearing from Bhagavad-Gita as it is, second chapter, contents of the Gita summarized, text 42-43. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadancha vipaschitaha vedavadarata parta Nanyad asti tivadina Kamatmana svargapara Janma karma phalapradan Kriya vishesha bahulam Bhogaishvarya gatim prati Yam imam all these, pushpitam, flowery, vacham, words, pravadanti, say, avipashchitaha, men with poor fund of knowledge, Vedavatarata, supposed followers of the Vedas, Partha, O son of Prita, Na, never, Anyat, anything else, Asti, there is, Iti, thus, Vajana, the advocates, Karma Atmanaha, desirous of sense gratification, Svaga Para, aiming to achieve heavenly planets, Janma Karma Phala Pradam, resulting in good birth and other fruitive reactions, Kriya Vishesha, pompous ceremonies, Bahulam, various, Bhoga, incense enjoyment, Aishvarya, and opulence, Gatim, progress, Prati, towards. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. Please repeat. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say there is nothing more than this. Purport. People in general are not very intelligent, and due to their ignorance they are most attached to the fruitive activities recommended in the Karma Kanda portions of the Vedas. They do not want anything more than sense gratificatory proposals for enjoying life in heaven, where wine and women are available and material opulence is very common. In the Vedas, many sacrifices are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets, especially the Jyotishtoma sacrifices. In fact, it is stated that anyone desiring elevation to heavenly planets must perform these sacrifices, and men with poor fund of knowledge think that this is the whole purpose of Vedic wisdom. It is very difficult for such inexperienced persons to be situated in the determined action of Krishna consciousness. As fools are attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the results of such attractions, unenlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment thereof. In the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas it is said, Apama somam amrita abhima, and Akshayam havai chaturmasya jagina sukram bhavati, sukritam bhavati. In other words, those who perform the 4-month penances become eligible to drink the Soma Rasa beverages to become immortal and happy forever. Even on this earth, some are very eager to have Soma Rasa to become strong and fit to enjoy sense gratifications. Such persons have no faith in liberation from material bondage, and they are very much attached to the pompous ceremonies of Vedic sacrifices. They are generally sensual, and they do not want anything other than the heavenly pleasures of life. It is understood that there are gardens called Nandanakanana, in which there is good opportunity for association with angelic, beautiful women, and having a profuse supply of Soma Rasa wine. Such bodily happiness is certainly sensual, and therefore there are those who are purely attached to such material temporary happiness as lords of the material world. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It is my honor to be able to speak to you after millions of years, millions of lifetimes of conditioned life. We have come to Krishna consciousness. So we are among the fortunate few. It is true that still, if we are not weeping tears of ecstasy, or the hairs of our body are not standing on end still, we are profoundly ignorant to some degree. If we don't experience ecstasy when we chant Hare Krishna, then it is said in the Shastra that our heart is actually still steel-framed. But not to be too discouraged by this, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that of thousands of karmis, or materialistic people, pious people, who open hospitals, schools, homes for the poor, etc., and of thousands of thinkers or jnanis who speculate and undergo severe austerities for a very long time. All that is insignificant compared to the Kanishta ringing the bell once before the deities of Krishna. So how valuable is this gift of devotional service? And of this devotional service, the most important part is Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita is hearing, chanting and remembering. Shravanam Kirtan Vishnu Smaranam is Bhagavad-Gita. And it is the most important part of devotional service. Just by Bhagavad-Gita, we can perfect our lives. But because of the nature of Kali Yuga, we also require what? Thank you. Panchatrika Vidhi, Archana, Vandanam, Atmanivedam, etc. The other processes are also required. But Prabhupada emphasized very clearly that if the Bhagavad-Gita does not go on nicely, then the Archana will not proceed for very long. there will be some problems there. It will become a chore. And it is a fact that over the years, the Bhagavad-Gita is not followed so seriously as it was years ago. In 1979, in New York Temple, 55th Street, there were 200 devotees, up to 200 devotees serving in that temple, 1979. And everybody listened to class. There were no exceptions. Either you were sitting in the class, or if you were a pujari, you would hear the class on the altar. And if you were in the kitchen, the class would be broadcast to the kitchen. And if you made any noise in the kitchen, everybody would pounce on you, because everybody wanted to hear what was being said in the class. Everybody took it very seriously. But now we see the attendance is very small. The archana in many temples is still going on very nicely, the temple worship, but the Bhagavad-Gita is neglected. Like we see here in the mornings, so many devotees at Mangalarati, Guru Puja, huge enthusiasm. But then for class, not so many. In America, so many devotees go to Guru Puja, but then for class, just a handful of devotees. So this is not just hearing. It's not that we just passively hear either, although there's going to be some purification there, even if we don't understand what is being said, because it's a transcendental process. Even if we don't understand, there's going to be some purification. But if we really want to participate, then the questions are also very important. Munayo sadhu prishtoham lokamangalam bhavadbhya lokamangalam yatkrita krishna samprashno yinatma suprasidati. This was said by Sutta Goswami to the sages at Naimisharanya. Now they had gathered for 1,000-year sacrifice. Very seriously, what was the purpose of that sacrifice? No. This is at Naimisharanya. 1,000-year sacrifice. Shamaka Rishi, yes, but for what? Yes, of course. Hearing and chanting was going, but for what purpose?
Satisfy the Lord and the devotees.
Yes, of course, that would satisfy the Lord because it was devotional service. But what was their purpose?
The effects of Kali Yuga.
Yes, that's right. Especially to curb demoniac influence of Kali Yuga. That's especially why they met. And Sutta Goswami said, he was perfectly satisfied by their perfect questions, samprashna. Perfectly satisfied by their perfect questions. Everybody was happy by that process. So that is the reciprocation of chanting and hearing, that we don't only hear, but we ask questions for the benefit of mankind. Because by this process of Krishna Katha, Krishna becomes pleased and mankind are benefited by it. So if we can ask good questions, it is not such an easy thing to ask good questions. It is easy to make comments and preamble. It is not so easy to ask good questions, simply because often we're bewildered about what it is we need to understand. So in that case, it is sometimes difficult. So quite often, our questions come in the form of challenges. You said this, and why is this, and why is that? But if we're hearing nicely, then we will participate in this process, and we will not just be passive, but for our own benefit and our own purification, we will be active in this process. And for the benefit not only of ourselves but for everybody, we will ask good questions. Not just that someone speaks and we see, and we sit passively, or quite often for most of us, including myself, it's a job to stay awake during a class. So clearly, at that standard, if we're having a job to stay awake, we're not really focused on saving mankind. You can say that. We're not experiencing the ecstasy of being servants of Krishna and spreading the message of Krishna consciousness. So, bearing these things in mind, today's verse is describing how living entities get carried away by the flowery words of the Vedas and enticements to go to the heavenly planets. And I must confess, if you're not convinced that sense gratification in the material world is a no-no, that there is actually no happiness there, then the happiness in the heavenly planets can be very appealing, especially if you have a sense of aesthetics, because the beauty of this earth cannot be compared to the beauty of the heavenly planets. In fact, the heavenly planets for our consciousness are inconceivable. Even the heavenly planets in the material world are inconceivable. Brahmaloka is a gold city. It is how many thousands of miles by thousands of miles, situated on the top of Mount Meru, in the middle of Jambudweep, surrounded by the cities of 7 major demigods. And Mount Meru is, 250,000 miles high. It's twice as high at the top as it is at the bottom. It's very, and surrounding Mount Meru there are so many ranges of huge mountains. There are 4 main mountains, and on those mountains there are trees which are 8,000 miles high, with a canopy of 8,000 miles. And fruits that fall from those trees, they break on the ground and they form rivers that flood all the varshas, or the areas of the heavenly planet, of Jambudweep, the different areas of Jambudweep. And when there's honey coming from those trees, there is cane juice coming from those trees, there is other things coming from those trees. And when those liquids touch the mud of the banks of the rivers, they form gold. So in the heavenly planets, all the living entities, they have everything they need for material enjoyment. And they don't get old. Their skin doesn't wrinkle, they don't get grey hairs. But there is one problem, which is, yes, they have to die. So the conditioned souls who get attracted to go to the heavenly planets, are missing the point of the Vedas, the true point of the Vedas. They are called Vedavada Rata. They are missing the Siddhanta of the Vedas. Now, the real purpose of the Vedas is to what? Vedascha Savaya Hama Vejo, is to know Krishna. So the aim of the Vedas is to actually become self-realized and to become re-established in our eternal relationship with Krishna. But the conditioned souls get carried away, misled, because of their material desires to want to enjoy these heavenly pleasures. Just like the yogis also, they get distracted, isn't it? Yogis get distracted. They think that material cities, 8 material cities, are very valuable. And they get distracted by those 8 material cities, which are, one must agree, very, very enticing, that you can create a planet, or you can become smaller than the smallest, or you can have control over the minds of other living entities. So there is that distraction. But, and also in devotional service, there are also hazards that, despite having the absolute knowledge from pure representative of Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, that we may, by our firefly intelligence, think that the information that Srila Prabhupada gave us, in the form that he presented it, is not suitable for this time. Already there are so many devotees who really think like that, and that is a serious digression to think. Srila Prabhupada emphasized, if we want to preach effectively and tactfully, then we simply repeat what he has said. You cram my books, read my purports, repeat what I have said, and that will bring all result. But already some of us are thinking, this won't work at this time. There is too much opposition in the material world because of modern ideas, feminism and all the rest of it, gay rights and all this. If we preach like Prabhupada taught, it will not work. And also there's another defect, that we think that aspects of karma kanda, such as the samskaras, are also devotional service, which they clearly are not. So in that way there are pitfalls in every process of purification, every aspect of the Vedas and the different processes recommended there. There are pitfalls because Krishna does not interfere with our free will. Despite giving us all knowledge for the perfection of our lives, still we misuse our free will due to a desire to enjoy the material world and to enjoy the senses. So the Vedas to follow the Vedas means regulated life. It is regulated life that actually demarcates the line between animals and human beings. I mean, animals do lead a regulated life, but it's prescribed for them. You don't find elephants acting like birds or giraffes acting like rabbits. They have their prescribed modes of behavior and they cannot change that. But human beings can regulate their lives, and the karma kanda section of the Vedas is specifically for living entities who want material enjoyment, who are not qualified to perform devotional service, but are allowed that enjoyment by Krishna under a regulated arrangement. So you can enjoy sex life, whatever you want. Nothing is denied, but it must be regulated to please Krishna. So in devotional service, Prabhupada says real regulation means, just to give an example of our regulation in spiritual life, in devotional life, that if you do not chant 16 rounds today, then you will forego your sleep to finish your rounds. So how important are our regulations in spiritual life? Sometimes we emphasize it's not so important. The rules and regulations are not so important. The most important thing is to love Krishna. So we put our hands on our hearts and say we love Krishna. But what do we do for Krishna? Do we ask nice questions so that for the benefit of other living entities? Do we try on a daily basis to purify our existence, to become humble, to become enlightened in Krishna consciousness? Or simply do we go from day to day trying to satisfy our senses, going where we want, eating what we want, talking what we want, with whom we want? But if we want to proceed in spiritual life, then of course all these things have to be regulated. We have to choose what we speak. We have to choose our association. We have to carefully choose our activities according to the instructions of our gurus. All these things are here. When we get Diksha, this is really the serious beginning. Diksha is really the the serious beginning of regulated life, because at Diksha we make the vow to chant 16 rounds, follow 4 regulative principles, etc. And Mam Chayo Vyabhicharane Bhakti-yoga Nasevate, providing we proceed with that vow without failing, we are transcendental. We are on the transcendental platform. And the analogy is given of a mango. A mango is a mango, whether it's unripe or ripe. So when we begin devotional service, we're like the unripe mango. But in time, the mango will become ripe, and we will experience love for Krishna. Because anything short of love for Krishna is not going to satisfy the heart. Just like if we love Krishna, we will want to speak about Krishna, glorify Krishna, and ask questions about Krishna, just as Sutta Goswami said. And he emphasized samprashna, which means, this is an important point, relevant questions. Relevant questions, questions that are going to help us advance in spiritual life. There are so many questions we can ask. For instance, when the living entities fall from the heavenly planets, which they do eventually, you can't stay there forever. It may be millions of years, but eventually you've got to come back to the earth. So how that process of coming back to the earth is described, isn't it? How is it? How does it happen? Does anybody know?
How they fall from the
Yeah.
planets?
Yes.
After thousands of years of enjoyment.
Yes. How do they?
And then finish their current merits, they have to come back again.
Yeah, how do they come down? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, when their present finish, they come back.
Yes, but how? What's the method? Yes. Okay. You got it. Through the rain. They come through the rain, and then the form of grains. The grains are eaten by the man, and the man get into the semen, right? And then there's impregnation. That's described. But if you really want to understand how that works, don't bother. It's like in the subterranean heavenly planets, there are facilities there for sense gratification which are superior to the sense gratification in the heavenly planets. If you read, where the residents there, although they're demoniac, they can enjoy married life, the affection of married life, without any impediment. We can't do that. To enjoy married life now, affection is very problematic. But in the subterranean heavenly planets, they can do that. No problem. So if you want to know why this is, it doesn't seem right. We may be misguided, because what's the result of having unobstructed affection for family? What is the result of that? We're involved in birth and death. Yes, exactly. So someone might be thinking, oh, why are they enjoying like that? But the result of that enjoyment is birth and death. So we may be misunderstanding that. But anyway, if we want to understand why these karma actually works, it's very difficult. I mean, we can inquire forever and become totally distracted, and it's not going to help our spiritual life at all. All we need to know is that if we die in ignorance, we go to the lower species. How we do it is not so important, but we must know that we'll become degraded. And also, if we fall down in spiritual life, we might take a human body. Just like Bharat Maharaj, he had to take the body of a deer for one birth. And understand that in Braj, if you come here for sense gratification or for business, then you might have to be born as what? Huh? Yes, a monkey or a dog. Prabhupada just gave that example, a monkey or a dog, for one birth before you can become purified. Yes. So all these possibilities are there. So the perfection of our life will be to stay on course and to follow exactly Srila Prabhupada's instructions, and not thinking that we already know more than he does. It is a grave, because the moment we think like that, then we are ineffective. We become impotent. So, does anybody have any questions, please? Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, they fall as rain, you said, no? But also, Srila Prabhupada says that they take birth in the aristocratic family or in a very advanced family.
No, that's yoga brashta. If you fall from devotional service, that's not if you fall from the heavenly planets.
Prabhupada said that they take to the pious activities, like they start to open.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Hospitals and doing charity or things like that, no?
Yes.
And but what my question is, if they fall rain, someone eats that grain, who eats this grain? If this person that eats the grain is not pious person, how they?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Prabhu. If you want to ask those questions, they're not relevant. They're not the questions that Sutta Goswami would have wanted to hear, because they're not really relevant. They're not going to help us, and it's not going to, as I explained, all we need to know is that if we don't behave properly, that certain things will happen to us. If we behave nicely, then other things will happen to us. Now, how that actually works by superior arrangement is very difficult to understand. We have 4 defects. We are infinitesimal. How to understand these things?
Yeah, but maybe there are some references from scripture.
Yes, no doubt. Yes, all information is there. Right, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.